You're listening to America on the Edge with CL Bryant and Stephen Parr on News Radio 710 Keel.
Welcome back to America on the Edge with CL Bryant. I'm Stephen Parr. If you'd like to talk to us about the NFL or anything that we're talking about today, you can give us a phone call, 318-320-KEEL. That's 318-320-KEEL. Also send us a tweet at The American Edge or on Facebook.com/America on the Edge. Our guest today is Jane Smith, as a principal here in Bossier Parish and the superintendent of Bossier Schools. Also served in the Louisiana House of Representatives and on the BESE board. First female high school principal in Bossier Parish and also first female superintendent for Bossier Parish. First woman to represent Bossier in the Louisiana House. So a lot of firsts here, and we really appreciate you joining us on the show today.
Welcome, Jane. Thank you so much for being here.
Glad to be here.
We've been talking about Common Core over the last couple of weeks. It is certainly something we're going to continue our conversation with. But with your time in education, and you, while you were superintendent, you were able to increase the scores for Bossier Parish schools 15%, which may not sound a lot, but that's the difference between a B and 100%. That's some great work. My question is, what do you think of Common Core as a system?
Yeah, I've been pretty outspoken about it when I was asked to finish the term on the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education. I really had to get into the weeds and understand the research and how this all came about. And so I had to be convinced myself that whether this was really good or not for our students, for our children. And I really came to the conclusion this is weird thinking. It's not the best for our kids. And there was one huge component left out of this when it was all devised, and that was parents.
You know, Jane, I want you to answer for our listening audience this question. Is Common Core a takeover, a government takeover of state and local education in all 50 states? Is that what it is?
It's an effort, I think, yes. I think it is to say, okay, whoever has control of the assessment, the test, who is the vendor that is going to sell the test, which is going to be aligned to Common Core. And by the way, if you're in the PARC consortium, there's only one vendor, and that's Pearson. And so there's millions and millions of dollars to be made by being the one that gets the contract for the test. But even before we get to that, the way this all started in 2009 was scores of governors came together across this country, and we've all been in situations where we thought, well, this doesn't sound real bad to have a set of standards that wherever you go, maybe your child is going to be on the same page or in the same direction that other students are wherever you move in these United States. So in 2009, it sounded like a good idea. 46, I believe, governors bought into it. But in 2010, things began to change. The current administration, the Obama administration, decided, hey, we'll get Bill Gates involved in this to market it all over the United States. We'll give money to school systems if they will align their schools with this Common Core standard. And, oh, by the way, we're going to pick the vendor and the test that you need. Get in the consortium you want to. And as Michelle Malkin said, if you follow the money trail, it all goes back to K Street in Washington.
Is it true that those 47 governors that you're talking about, they actually signed on to the idea before they actually read exactly what this was?
Those standards weren't even developed when they signed on to the concept. And by the way, the ones for high school are still not developed.
So it's like Obamacare in that case, that they signed on to it before they read it.
I call it Obamacare, and people that have not really done the research on it have a mistaken feeling that you can like Common Core, but you want local standards. You can't have it both ways. If you sign on to Common Core, then you got to follow their standards, and the test is aligned with the standards.
So had the feds actually released the money to these governors and their states before they actually knew what was in this? Was the money already allocated?
The money was not allocated. It's my understanding that at the beginning it was almost like a retreat. They came together and had these concepts and these ideas, and then after they signed on, this would be a good idea. Then others became involved in it, and when they saw there was a money trail that you could follow, and that there were billions of dollars to be made off the assessments, then they decided we need a marketing tool, and Bill Gates is our guy.
I want to go back to something you first started off with. You said one of the problems with it is that parents weren't involved. What do you mean by that?
Well, first of all, the outcry is going to come from parents and courageous teachers. They're going to be the ones that change this problem with the Common Core concept, because it's a weirded out, I call it a weirded out way of teaching math. I think it's not appropriate for the age of children. It's confusing. It's frustrating to them. And it says all children must now learn math this way. And Eureka Math is the Pearson product. So if you want me to, I can give you some crazy examples. If you can't say 9 plus 5 equals 14, you've got to have 5 or 6 different steps, because a child might be afraid of 9 but not 10.
Well, okay, wait a minute. Okay, Jane, come back at me now. Now, folks, I want you to put your ears on, as I do, because this is just how warped some of this Common Core presentation is. Jane, describe this again. Please go through that again.
Okay, well, I just watched a presentation of a teacher trying to explain why, if you have a first grader and you want to teach them 9 plus 5 equals 14, it's not acceptable just to say, I memorized that 9 plus 5 equals 14. You've got to draw boxes and squares, and you've got to have, if you don't really feel comfortable with 9, you might feel comfortable with 10. And here you bring the 10 down and you just subtract something else from it. And finally you get to 14, but it's not a memorization type thing. You've got to draw pictures and do word analysis. And it's the reason I say it's not appropriate is that first graders are not into the business of explanations and analysis. They are geared to memorize.
Right.
We all memorized our multiplication tables. We memorized facts. That's what children do. They memorize. Now, at a more appropriate time, you might want to teach an analysis of why 9 plus 5 is 14, but there could also be 10 minus 5 and all of those other things relating to it. But it's very confusing. And so, unfortunately, parents have become really disturbed and frustrated in trying to help their children.
Stephen, you see what Stephen, I want you and I to let's talk about this for just a second.
Okay.
Jane, we're going to keep you here for a few extra minutes. Do you see what's going on here? This is a design to take you totally out of this picture.
Right.
Because what is going on here can only be described in the classroom to the student.
That's a very good point.
You can't send this home to the parent.
That's a very good point, because when you are around the kitchen table, when you have a nuclear family, and you're trying to be involved, as the schools say parents should be, and you're checking the homework, if you didn't do math this way, if you didn't do this newfangled XC plus 4 plus, Cubert, it doesn't make sense, and you can't help your kids.
I was a strong C+ student in math. You bring this to me, I'm out of there.
And I can understand when, Jane, what you were talking about, there may be a time when you want to describe how we get there, but that's a geometric proof. You do that in geometry after you've had algebra. Exactly. You take geometry, then you go into algebra 2. But during geometry, that's when you start doing the proofs of this is why what equals what.
Exactly.
Not in third grade.
No, and the fear that I have in all of this is that when you have a first grader that's frustrated and feels that they don't understand what's going on, and then in some parishes in this state right now, and I'm sure it's happening across the nation, because parents are in an uproar about it, teachers are saying, don't ask your parents to help you with their homework because they don't understand it. You're going to try to help your parents understand how we're doing this in school. And that's actually happening in some parishes right now in this state.
Which, by the way, is the way to get parents out of education.
Right.
And one of the biggest problems in our lowest performing schools, Jane, if I'm just saying made up stuff here, you tell me if I'm wrong. But it seems to me the lowest performing schools on average have the least involved parents.
Absolutely.
That's absolutely correct.
Absolutely. And this is another thing, folks, that we have to consider here. Hitler, give me those books, give me the children, and I'll take this nation.
That's exactly right.
And let me tell you something. To fundamentally change it, we're looking at a fundamental shift in a very basic subject.
But not in the right way.
Not in the right way.
Jane, we're running a little on time here. Real quick, how did you improve Bossier Schools 15%?
Well, I think it was a combination. We had a great team effort, but I will tell you this. I think every day I tried to motivate the folks that were in the classroom, involvement, and buy-in from what I considered to be our greatest resources, and that's our parents, our teachers, and our children. I tried to have a team effort there and motivate them.
You improved Bossier Schools by getting the parents more involved.
And this
Why are we copying that pattern instead of copying a pattern
that
was made up in a committee?
It worked.
A camel is a racehorse designed by a committee.
That's exactly like that. Let me ask you this, Jane. I'm going to keep you one more minute. Let me ask you this. You got to answer this question for me. For our audience.
I'll try.
Answer this question for our audience. If there is one thing that our parents should know or be cautioned about as far as Common Core is concerned, what would you say it is?
I would say they have to be courageous. They cannot sit back and say, well, what can I do? This is what they're asking them to do at school. Look at the kind of work that their children are doing. If they can't help their children with their homework, that's a serious, serious problem. They need to become very involved, talking to the teacher, talking to the principal. Now, here's the thing we've got to understand. The schools are doing what they're basically think they're supposed to do because of the state superintendent of education and the board. The board saying we're doing park-like questions. And so that's why I said at the end of the day, this battle is going to be won. And it is going to be won, but it's going to be because of parents and courageous teachers.
Parents, let me tell you something. You can't sit around, as Jane Smith has told us so courageously here today, and go for what they are telling you your children need from them. They work for you. School board meetings. Superintendents need to be on the alert that parents are now awake, and we're looking at what might go wrong with Common Core. You're listening to America on the Edge. I'm CL Bryant, along with Stephen Parr. We'll be back in a minute.
Giving you the edge. This is America on the Edge with CL Bryant and Stephen Parr on News Radio 710 Keel.